the things I could do if I had a basic income. It would be a rich man's world. Hello, everyone. I'm Brent. I'm the host for Canadians with Disabilities and Their Allies. And today I have Patricia joining us to talk about basic income.
Fantastic. Well, I'm very excited. And I gave myself some notes because I definitely get very nervous when I speak. And I definitely get very nervous about speaking about basic income because it's a passion project for me. So I wrote some stuff down, and I'm going to draw on some of my experiences with my research. I guess I'll start with any questions at all.
Sure. I'll start off with a couple questions for you, Patricia. Okay, so basic income, how would that affect people who are, say, 65 years plus, who maybe have had a provincial designation as a person with disabilities, but no longer are eligible for provincial assistance or pension, but are still disabled, but according to the government, they're no longer disabled, but how are they going to, how would they benefit from a basic income, like maybe including their prescriptions, their medical and stuff like that? That would be the first question I have. And how would it be kind of a replacement to the existing programs that are like provincial, like across the country? Like would it basically replace the existing programs that people know it as today, like EI and CPP and income assistance, disability assistance, GIS, and all those things? Like, so yeah, just wondering if you maybe would talk about that.
So I guess the big ticker there is everybody has a version of what basic income should look like. And as with any benefit program, the way we conduct our vision of basic income is truthfully the answer to that. We kind of lose sight of who we become at the age of 65. And in a perfect world, in my vision of basic income anyways, you wouldn't. I don't understand personally why we feel as though our seniors have to lose sight of an income as soon as they become 65 years old. Because you become a retiree, for example, why do you need to lose an income? If this is something which is provided to you, I don't believe for any second that you should stop being a taxpayer. Basic income is a system which provides people an income supplement or an income at all, where people maintain their position in society where they are income payers or where they are taxpayers. If you are provided with a real basic income, you are providing a space in society where you are also a taxpayer, both on the federal level and on the provincial level. As a person who is of working age, you would also be paying into CPP, especially if you sit within the first and even second tax bracket. In my vision of basic income, if you sit as a $0 to $5,000 earner, you would be being paid an estimate of $40,500, which I know sounds like a big number, but truthfully, it's not a big number. I don't know anybody in the country who can live off of less. And we're always talking in benefit program terms, anywhere from the Canada Disability Benefit to ODSP is worse, to EI, to even GLBI, where we sit at roughly the $19,000 to $22,000 range. And I've never understood a society that wants to keep people poor. I really don't. And not only that, but we have a very loose definition of what the word, like what the catchphrase is for poverty line. Everybody has a different definition of what that is. We shouldn't be looking to keep people poor. If we are paying as real taxpayers in the first tax bracket, we could be paying into CPP. As a senior citizen, I don't think it's fair to punish people for being older. If you hit 65 years old, if you've been paying into CPP off of a basic income, let's say you're 40 years old, you're receiving basic income at a $40,500 level. You've been paying into it from 40 years old, and you're now 65 years old, and you've been paying into it for 25 years. At the age of 65, now that you've been paying into it, instead of just paying into it, now instead of doing that, you're receiving basic income plus you're receiving back your CPP. And that's how I envision basic income. My vision for basic income is that you are now a participant in CPP. And we don't have a society which looks upon CPP that way, or looks upon basic income that way. And I really think that we should think about CPP or think about basic income this way, because that way we are now all participants in society. And I truly mean that. Everybody is a participant in the tax paying structure. When we are all participating in paying taxes, the entire infrastructure of our society becomes stronger. And I don't know why we don't want that. I don't understand why we don't want that for everybody. Just doesn't make any sense to me. Back in 2020, in Trinity Bellwood Park, $2 million was spent to evict 60 homeless encampments. If we had used that money as a reflection of basic income protocol on those 60 people, we would have been distributing $33,333 gross. If we were to pretend that we spent a scant bit more, let's pretend we were going to pay them $40,500 each gross. And that would have looked like $2,433,000. It's not actually a whole lot more in the grand scheme of things. Now let's pretend it was taxed. At the federal level, 15%, at the provincial level, 5.05%, and let's pretend each of them chipped in for CPP for a $0 earner from a primary source of income. So we now have the flexibility of investing in CPP at this level. CPP was at the time 5.45%. Now let's say we operate basic income in the same way that any pay structure does, bi-weekly, so it's a normal, regular paycheck. That means that every person who had been evicted would have received $1,257.19 each week. With a roommate, that sounds like rent, groceries, insurance, clothing, medicine, hygiene, quality of life. It is fiscally irresponsible to punish people for being poor. UBI Works, which is another page, which I guess everybody here knows what UBI Works is. I mean, they're just a program here. They have their own ideals as to what manifests as basic income, and they've got a very sound policy, and I've been following them, and I think they've got a really great substantial concept. They have an idea about disallowing for tax cuts. I think they've got a very sound ideal. If we were to take what their proposed method was by which to seed basic income and combine it with 4 new tax brackets, I believe that the funding for a true and honest program, which is not considered a benefit, can facilitate a working program which is opt-in and is well suited to build an infrastructure which will rebuild systemic change. My proposed values for basic income aligns with the tax brackets and decreases in values as the brackets ascend. Proposed values are, for 15% tax brackets, $40,500 gross. For 20.5% tax brackets, $36,000 gross. For the 26% tax bracket, $33,000 gross. For the 29% tax bracket, $29,000 gross. And for the 33% tax brackets, $26,620,000 gross. I believe that these tax brackets now reflect what's called the middle class because of the massive wealth gap which has been created. We either have people who are massively poor or people who are extremely wealthy. We have 58 new billionaires. And I think that people are scrambling they're dipping into their saving, or they're getting second and third jobs. And I truly believe that people who live in the fourth and the fifth tax brackets, I do believe that this is now the new middle class. And I'm not opposed to people having money or having access to money. I really am not. I just think that it's important that we recognize that it's okay to have access. As far as these 4 new tax brackets go, I'm okay with chopping it off at the 5th tax bracket. But I do believe that it's important to recognize that basic income become a fundamental component of a society, and it become a wholesome collective agreement.
Well, I have just a comment. I mean, this is going back to your other segment you had from the previous guest, and it was Janet that spoke up and said that one of her comments was that the disabled community is helping to fund the non-profit industry, and that really, I mean, I've always known that to be true, but it's just one of those comments that really stuck with me, because we're talking about a basic income now, or just think of if everybody had a basic income, that you could do away with all of the nonprofits, you could do away with all the food banks, and and that would be a cost savings as well, right? Because you could just flush all that nonsense away. The society would be so much better off, because when you're funding the nonprofits, you're not really helping directly, right? It's just a whole bunch of make-believe in a lot of ways. So
you are absolutely 100% right about that. The most troubling for me is the concept of inflation. Again, these fear-driven terms are very troubling for me. When we are looking at what is considered to be our inflation, real inflation, and this sort of designated version of inflation that we have, where companies like Loblaws are posting profits of 40%, and then people are being pushed towards food banks, is very, very hard to deal with. I'm listening to people in our spaces talk about how often they have to go to food banks, and it's painful, because it's not fair. Why are people going to food banks when Loblaws is posting 40% profit margins? I'm just so outraged by this. This isn't okay. And basic income would pull for corporate accountability, because a real basic income, which, like, at a level of $40,500, that's a $21 per hour pay. Essentially, that's what that looks like. It's $21 an hour at 8 hours a day, if that's what you're going to look at it as. And I don't think that anybody should begrudge anybody that. Now, I realize that there's, I don't know what it is with the pay minimum wages in BC. I know that out in Ontario it's $15 an hour, or what is it $15 an hour? Is it
$15.65 now?
$15.65 now, but
just went up.
How do you know that? Anyway, so it's still pretty meager, you know what I mean? Like it's
the taxes off, yeah.
And it's certainly not livable.
Exactly.
These are not livable wages, but a $21 an hour wage is livable. And people are not being forced to go to a food bank at $21 an hour. We could kiss them goodbye. And Neil is absolutely right. And I truly believe that that's what the society needs. But a healthy society is an empowered society.